Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel-good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment-friendly public transportation. In this episode of Railway Transportation Systems, we are honored to host Scott McGowan, the Managing Director and CEO of COSOL Limited. With over 2 decades of leadership in both startups and global corporations, Scott has a proven track record in strategic planning, project management, and system engineering strategies. His expertise spans across mining systems, enterprise integration, and delivering innovative solutions that enhance competitiveness and improve customer service offerings. Under his leadership, COSOL has been instrumental in driving operational efficiency across asset-intensive industries, including significant contributions to the rail sector. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Scott, could you share your journey to becoming the CEO of COSOL and how your background has influenced your leadership style?
Yeah, fantastic. So first of all, probably worthwhile starting with the history and the pedigree of COSOL. So COSOL, what it stands for, originally was Collaborative Solution Providers International, which was about how do we do things with our customers to drive efficiencies and deliver value. And we realized pretty quickly that unfortunately the name was too long for our business cards and our email addresses. So we shortened that down to COSOL to keep the intent and the culture behind it, but actually to deliver a more efficient outcome for ourselves. So from, I guess, my journey with becoming the CEO of COSOL, I actually came from a technical background. So by trade, I'm actually a software developer. But quickly I realized there's lots of software developers who are really, really good at developing software. And I found a passion in that intersect between business and technology. So where I started to kind of grow in my career was working with customers to articulate some of the challenges they were having in their industries and then turning that into requirements or specifications for technical people to be able to build, relevant software to drive a different outcome for those businesses. So I really enjoyed not just solving those technical problems, but seeing how those solutions could change the way the business operates. It's probably shaped me into more of a hands-on and passionate leader. I understand the subject matter. I understand the technical capabilities, and bringing those together, it really excites me with our customers. I like to be close to the work, close to our people, and make sure what we're doing with our technology actually delivers meaningful outcomes for our customers.
Wow, great journey. A combo, business and technology. I personally have seen that COSOL has a strong presence in asset-intensive industries. How does your experience got from mining systems translate to rail sector?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. So originally we were born out of a mining background, but largely due to the GFC in about 2009, 2010, we realised pretty quickly that we needed to diversify from a sector perspective. And one of the things that we realised that was common for us in our experience is where physical assets, managing large physical assets, really differentiated us in the marketplace. So you kind of quickly see whether it's mining or utilities or energy or transport, the core challenges are very, very similar. Things like aging assets, pressure to extend asset life, the need to extract more value from data, and bridging the gap between operations and technology are always common themes in those industries, where other industries such as finance and retail, etc., went through their kind of digital transformation many years ago. We find the physical asset organisations, because of the large capital, they're slow moving, they're fairly traditional in the way they operate. It was a kind of a natural spot for us to operate. What's transferable is the complexity of managing large dispersed asset base and the demand for that reliability and efficiency. No matter the sector, organisations want to reduce downtime, make smarter investment decisions, and connect their workforce with better tools and insights. And that's where COSOL add values by taking taking the lessons learnt from one industry and applying them to another, we often can accelerate improvements and learn from the different industries and bring different ways of working to our customers.
100%, I agree. But it's not easy.
Correct.
Yeah, definitely there might have been some challenges. Can you tell us the key challenges which you have observed in integrating enterprises systems like SAP and Ellipse within the rail operations?
Yeah, look, I think one of the biggest challenges that we see, particularly in rail, is the systems have been built up over decades. These are large, monolithic enterprise systems that have typically been born out of a pedigree of one particular function over others. So you get a lot of legacy technology, you get a lot of inconsistent data, you get a lot of strengths and weaknesses of those individual platforms, but actually the business context about how they provide value to the customers is quite specific and really centered around the asset-centric approach. So, from our point of view, bringing SAP and Ellipse together means you've got to clean and standardize a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of processes. Otherwise, you don't get reliable insights. Another hurdle is adoption. So these are complex systems built for highly advanced users. And what we find is a lot of organizations are looking for simplicity, particularly in varying skills of workforce, varying degrees of education, etc. So frontline teams don't want to make their jobs harder. So change management and training are just as important as the technology itself. And of course, rail is safety critical, so you can't afford the disruption of operations while you're integrating. So doing all these things all together. But I think from our point of view, that understanding the business context and what they're trying to achieve is critically important. I think finally it's about striking the right balance. Rail has very specialised needs, but if you over-customise systems like SAP or Ellipse, they become hard to maintain. And the goal for us is always to make it simple, a single integrated view of the asset across its life cycle. But getting there takes a lot of discipline around the data, the processes, and its people.
100%. I concur with that completely. The data integration is really crucial for operational efficiency. Let's do one example. How does COSOL approach the integration of SCADA systems, as an example, with enterprise platforms in the rail industry?
Yeah. So I think when we look at integrating SCADA with enterprise platforms in rail, our focus is always on the business outcome. So not just the technology. And a lot of people want to integrate things, but without understanding the value they're going to bring to the table. SCADA gives you all this live operational data, but actually it's almost about understanding the data that matters, or the metrics that matter is what we would typically say. So, when we start to integrate with systems like SAP or Ellipse to drive maintenance planning, to drive scheduling outcomes or asset lifecycle or investment decisions, it really is about the accuracy of that information, that feed up of that real-time data and what it's telling us about the performance of that asset at a point in time. And I think a lot of organizations want to integrate data. They want to have lots of information flowing back and forth, but actually understanding what they're trying to achieve with that data. And then a lot of organizations and a lot of our customers get lost in almost this pollution of data where there's so much information and so much data, and they're analyzing things and they're running all these analytical programs, but they actually kind of get almost lost in the maze of data that they create. So having a clear view of what you're trying to achieve with that data is really critical. Look, we approach it with a fairly layered architecture. We capture and cleanse the data at the edge. So, if you're talking about accurate data, you're talking about the metrics that matter. You don't want to flow all of that information into big enterprise monolithical systems like SAP and Ellipse without kind of cleansing it to a certain extent and understanding what's real, what's noise, and what the impacts of that is. So, we kind of secure it, we capture that data, we cleanse it at the edge, we map it into a standard data model. I think one of the other challenges we have in a lot of organizations is, what one person calls material, another person calls stock, another person calls inventory, another person calls, and it's about that standardization and understanding of that data in that context, so that when we're talking about availability, and I've seen this for many, many years, how maintenance looks at availability versus from an asset perspective versus how operations look at how they interpret availability are all different. So that clarity around their data model and that standardization of the data model is really critical. And then ultimately the security and reliability are just not not negotiable, especially when you start to bridge OT and IT.
Yeah.
You have to have that secure layer, because once you start to go from the operational side and you go from the process control networks into the IT world, if you can start to then maintain, manage, or actually push data back into those operational technology networks, it becomes quite serious in terms of the criticality of that information and also what it can do to those assets. Look, what does it really all mean? Ultimately, from our point of view, practically it means we can do alerts and alarms, events, automatically trigger the work order events, so we don't have people going and having to manually create a work order. And these are this elimination of manual tasks that we kind of tend to spend a lot of time around. Trends can flow into the analytics, planners get the context they need to act quickly, and we roll that out in stages so we don't overwhelm the individuals who are trying to adopt the change as we go. So they're probably some of the key things that we see when we integrate the SCADA. But again, I think the underlying theme is it's got to be secure. The data's got to be reliable. Our big focus is when reliability matters. And if that data's not reliable and in a standardized data model as it feeds in, then the ability to use that data to make decisions becomes almost untenable.
Yep.
So from our perspective, having that real-time data is critical, but having the right data and the right information at a point in time and understanding the context is critical.
Great insight, Scott. Let's stick to the data analytics because it seems interesting, but we will add your other expertise, business.
Mm-hmm.
So COSOL recently acquired Toustone, enhancing your capabilities in data analytics. How does this acquisition benefit your rail sector clients?
Look, the acquisition of Toustone was a strategic acquisition that COSOL performed and completed in December 2024. They specialise in data and AI-driven analytics, where the broader COSOL specialised in assets and understanding of what the business outcomes and what they're trying to achieve. So I think, from our point of view, one of the really, really kind of key aspects is we're seeing particularly rail passenger organisations move much more towards a customer experience approach, which is vastly different to did the train show up, did it meet its scheduled performance, which is historically how all passenger rail providers or public rail providers have performed. Now, I think the difference here is with the Toustone business, it's actually about that intersect between the statutory authority, the asset owner, and the operate and maintainer, which is kind of a new concept in this, public-private partnerships world in Australia in particular, and having a single view of the world where, the contracts are built like that. The contracts therefore talk about customer experience. Customer experience now is not whether the train got to the station on time, but if a passenger was unable to get to the platform, then there's no benefit from an organisational point of view whether the train got to the station on time if passengers can't get to the train. So I think it's just a whole new way of working. They've built this really unique capability and really unique solution that leverages, it's a native cloud environment. It's got real-time data feeds that, interact with the customers all the way through to the assets, all the way through to the contracts. And linking all that together as a single pane of glass, I think, is the new way of working. And what we're seeing in rail now is as it starts to roll out that same private-public partnership model to other rail providers around Australia, we're now starting to see it's kind of become the gold standard.
Yeah.
And I think you'd agree if you've been on the Metro Trains rail provider, it's probably a shining light. It's one of the most successful kind of autonomous rail projects, well, certainly in Australia, but probably globally as well.
Yeah, understand. I have been on the Metro train Sydney. And I actually worked in Sydney Metro as well. And Toustone was on my podcast as well.
Yeah.
I did an episode with them. So we spoke about enterprise systems like SAP, Ellipse, and also data analytics. Let's go to the other section, mobility solutions. These are transforming field operations. Can you discuss how COSOL is leveraging this mobile technology to improve rail maintenance and operations?
Mobility is one aspect of it. So it's definitely a benefit to rail operations. And at COSOL, we're helping, our customers move away from paper-based or desktop-heavy processes and putting some of those enterprise systems directly in the hands of field crews through mobile technology. But, in that context, I guess, for our maintenance teams, it means they can access real-time work order information, asset histories, the schematics of some of the assets itself whilst out on site, and then importantly, capture condition data, photos, inspection results, straight back in the system. And one of the experiences we had recently was just the ability for, as they capture that data, that in the field, that defect, and this was there was a rebuild going on as part of it.
Yeah.
A crack was detected, the photo was taken, and what would have typically happened in the past is the work order would have been completed, the rebuild would have been completed, that rolling stock would have gone back into production. But actually with that kind of real-time feedback, it was identified that there was a crack was detected in the structure, and actually the supervisor was able to make a decision right then and there to say, hang on a sec, before we assemble this component back together, we should fix that.
Yep.
And it's those decisions, without that, the maintenance worker would have reassembled the component, put it back together, raised the defect. It would have gone through a process over time, and maybe in 6 months' time, we would have seen that end up as a work order again. Whereas that ability for the supervisor, the superintendent levels to be able to go, hey, we should fix this now whilst we've got the chassis apart, that makes a significant difference to maintenance operations.
It does.
I think all of that above said, I actually think there's a business model evolution where we can extend field inspections to be carried out through the public, almost in this gamification type of way. Public ride our transportation all the time. How do we give more, think about the customer experience model that we're working for. How do we interact with the public so they can inspect things? They can talk about graffiti. They can talk about, issues within the cabin itself, air conditioning not working. All of these little defects that we've traditionally sent field crews out, they've run around in vans or they've gone to yards, etc., and gone and inspected things. I think there's a much more, let's call it customer-centric, customer experience way of doing things. And I think when we adopt that next level of what I call mobility, but it's actually almost a crowdsourcing of inspection data, I think it'll absolutely transform public assets and public infrastructure, because if you think of the money that organisations spend in just inspecting assets, and then if you can get the public to do it, you can engage with the public, and you can either, maybe it's free fares or prizes or whatever that might be. One, you're going to get a hugely beneficial customer relationship, but also significant cost savings around that as well.
Amazing. Great insights. Highly technical and very innovative solutions. A quick CEO question. How do you ensure profitability while delivering these innovative solutions in the rail sector?
Yeah, look, I think from our point of view, customer intimacy, employee centricity, and when reliability matters are the three core tenets of the business. We aren't a build it and they will come type of organisation. So whilst we come up with a point of view, we come up with different solutions, a lot of the time we work with our customer base in a partnership model, and we co-innovate together. And I think that's really important. So we're not away investing in hoping that things will happen in the future. We're not ahead of the curve. We're not an Apple or a Google, that type of model. We're very much a customer relationship, customer partnership model, where if it's not relevant to our customers, then we don't want to invest in it ahead of the curve. So I think it's just that balance of thought leadership with the relationship with a customer, where you can have that open transparency and know that some things won't work and some things will work. I think our customers respect that they still want us to be in business as well, so everyone's got to make a profit. We help them reduce costs and get return over time. They pay for the services and the value they receive.
Yep, I agree. Very great insights. Can you provide an example of a project where COSOL significantly improved operational efficiency for a rail client?
I think the key one is off the back of the two-stone work. And we've been on that journey with Metro Train Sydney from the very, very start, right? So even before it was operational, we were collecting asset data, collecting condition data, putting the maintenance plans and strategies together for them to be able to operate their assets efficiently. But ultimately, with the two-stone overlay, the ability to say, predict energy consumption from a rail perspective using machine learning and data that we've got, whether that's external data, passenger historical trends, operational performance, production information, asset information, and bringing all that together. I mean, we're predicting energy consumption within 2 or 3% of actuals. And, I think they're contracted within kind of somewhere between 6 and 10%. So that's adding real value where they can then take decisions around spot pricing or long-term contracts or whatever they might do to be much more efficient in their operations.
Great insights. Recently, I heard that COSOL is heavily involved in the US market. That you guys have identified it's a key growth for COSOL. What opportunities do you see for rail infrastructure projects in that region?
Yeah, look, I think the US is an interesting market, particularly for us and the presence that we have there. You talk about, we talk in Australia about some of the numbers and the sizes of the organisations, but, when we're talking about the Federal Transit Administration, they spend $20 billion US annually for transit agencies. It was originally set up as a one-time capital boost, but now it's critical to the transit agencies for their survival. So, they have to justify that spend, where they're spending it, why they're spending it, how they do utilise their capital, and that ability to understand how their assets are performing, whereas historically it's been kind of provided out as almost a operating expense.
Yeah.
That justification as they start to become probably more commercial, and therefore they have to think about where they're spending the money, how they want to buy new fleet, buy new rolling stock, pay for new infrastructure, whether it be signalling, etc. We're seeing a significant spend in that and a significant insight into they need the data to be able to justify that spend to the government federal agencies. So since 2012, they must report asset condition to the National Transit Database. So this is, again, another information. Think about what I said before around that tripartite agreement between a statutory authority, an asset owner and an operator and maintainer, bringing all that together and then being able to say the state of good repair rules as opposed to repair replace. I think all of that information has really set us up to become quite strong in the US. And what we're seeing is those initial ones kick off now where they're going, actually, first step, we just need to understand the condition of our assets before we worry about anything else. And then there's a huge risk of their funding loss without that strong asset visibility.
Great to hear that COSOL is having global engagement as well as in multiple sectors. Your presence is in multiple sectors. But in your answer, you just spoke about asset management. Mm-hmm. What role does predictive analytics play in COSOL's approach to asset management, especially in the rail industry?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic and something I've had a lot of discussions previously about. But I think one of the challenges we have, because of the safety criticality of the infrastructure and the assets in rail in particular, letting assets fail is not something that we want to do. And without failure information, it's very, very hard to learn. I think about predictive asset management, for instance. Without that failure information, without that failure data and understanding the root cause and then being able to kind of understand the circumstances in which that asset failed, it's very, very difficult to move from a highly costly preventative strategy to a predictive strategy. So I think what we can do is start to collate that information and provide insights and recommendations to those rail providers to predict potential failures, but I don't think it'll ever be adopted as a truly predictive failure. I think it's going to be more of a risk management play, and where those assets have potential to cause safety incidents for either employees or the public. I think that's going to take a long time for organisations to start to truly trust the data. I think it all comes down to trust.
Yep.
And what we're seeing now is we're probably on maybe level 1 of 10 as to making sure we've just got the right data in a timely manner. So once data gets stale, it no longer becomes valuable. I think there's a lot of value there in terms of an asset management approach or maintenance approach, but I think it's still going to require a lot of human decision making to support that.
I agree. So far we discussed a lot about technology, innovative products, as well as business. But all put together, in today's world, there is increasing focus on sustainability. How is COSOL helping rail companies achieve their environmental goals through technology?
Yeah, look, I think from our point of view, realistically, we're about how do we do things more efficiently with our customers. So, there's challenges around sustainability. If you think about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 from an ESG perspective, making sure that your suppliers are also aligned to your ESG or your sustainability goals. I think data just cuts through that from our perspective. So we're doing a lot of work to understand and capture data around all the different scopes of that information. We capture a lot of energy related data. So if we talk about, rail in particular, passenger rail, energy consumption is critical. So if we can optimize that and provide forward-looking estimates to government, etc., where we can start to manage peak loads more effectively with the energy consumption that we take place. All of those aspects from a COSOL perspective, it's around energy prediction, to be able to be confident about that. We're very confident now with our energy prediction model for our customers. It's about understanding the vendor landscape right the way through, all the way back for us, and then ultimately it's about making sure that there's no wastage. So eliminating waste without compromising reliability and safety and regulatory and statutory aspects. That's actually where the value that COSOL brings to the table. So we can save energy, we can save costs, we can save making sure that workers are safe, and then making sure that the public is safe as part of that.
Amazing answer. Scott, in your intro, you just said that you are a technical person, but as well as you're interested in business. So it's a combo. Now, I always seen that there is a difference between technical team and business stakeholders. They're poles apart. How do you make sure as a CEO to make sure that they collaborate, both technical teams and business stakeholders?
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face. And I went to a conference only 2 weeks ago where the answer was AI and kind of what's the solution, what's the question. I think why COSOL's the way it is we said we're going to be specialists in asset management. And when I talk about asset management, I talk about asset and works management, inbound supply chain and costing. And they're all tightly integrated processes. And I think having that context and focusing on that particular area and then being deep and kind of vertically integrated from a business point of view is the only way to do it. So even our technical people understand asset management. They understand inbound supply chain from a spare parts perspective. They understand what our customers are trying to achieve. I think that's important. So I think going forward, the generic views of technology providers or systems integrators, I think that's times of the past. I think they will continue to do the lower level generic things. Industry specialized, vertically integrated businesses like COSOL, where you've got a very clear subject matter that you focus on and everyone in the business understands what you're trying to achieve, is actually the secret to bringing those business and technology together. I mean, quite frankly, I'm sure there's other technologists that are kind of understand more things than our team does.
Yeah.
But our team understands the business context in which they're applying the technology, and that is critical.
It is. I know COSOL is a very technology company and you work on very innovative solutions, but still, because technology evolves every day, how does COSOL stay ahead in providing this cutting-edge solution to its rail sector?
Yeah, look, I think we combine that industry expertise with a strong focus on innovation. Innovation is part of our culture. It's what we engage with our business to do. We have structures and processes in place. We continually monitor emerging technologies. We work with, provide use cases to our customers. We then invest with our customers to identify whether or not that's something that's applicable and evaluate how they deliver the value. So we're kind of almost pseudo building the business case with them on the way through. But it's through partnerships, through acquisitions, through in-house development. We bring new capabilities to our customers quickly. We're ready to fail though, and I think with our customers we've got to be ready to fail with new technologies. Some things work, some things don't. However, we're always guided by reliability. We don't adopt technology or adopt technology for its own sake. Every solution has to be tested and tailored to improve safety, reliability, and efficiency on the rail network. And this ensures our customers benefit from practical, and I use the word practical deliberately there, cutting edge solutions. So we won't just do things for, it has to have a use case that adds value.
Wow, great insights. Before I let you go, Scott, my last question. Looking ahead, what emerging trends or technologies do you believe will have the most significant impact on rail transportation systems?
I wish I had a crystal ball, because if I was investing in that now, I'd probably wouldn't have to work in the future. But I think if I look ahead now and I understand what's in the immediate future, I'd say there's several emerging trends that are set to transform rail transportation. Look, everyone's going to say this, and I'm have to say it as well. AI will make an impact but I don't think it's going to replace jobs. I truly don't believe that. I think what it's going to have is going to be AI savvy people, and there's going to be AI non-savvy people. And the AI savvy people will utilize AI to make themselves more productive and therefore more saleable and more industry focused. But I don't think it's going to replace jobs. And I really do think we're in the infancy there. I think we're many years away. We've got to invest time back into the models themselves. Just like we have an apprentice on a site, we've actually got to explain what they're doing wrong. We've got to explain when mistakes are made, and then we've got to continually teach that. And I think that's going to take time to get that trust in AI, but it is going to impact it. I think it'll impact predictive maintenance. So I think preventative maintenance and predictive maintenance will evolve over time. And probably more importantly is this new way of thinking about this customer first, or this customer centric, like it is a public service.
Yeah.
In a lot of circumstances, it's a public infrastructure, whether even if it's doing commodity movements or bulk, etc. From a rail perspective, it's still a customer service. And I really think that kind of customer experience, stakeholder experience will become a very, very important part of the rail industry. I think digital twins, the ability to see those things together, look, they're going to impact it. But my honest belief in the next 12 months, it's about automation. How do you lean out non-value added tasks? How do you remove wastage within those organisations? Which, and honestly, for the rail industry in particular, a lot of the organisations are 100-plus-year-old organisations. They are old organisations. Metro Train Sydney, not so much, but they've been around for a long time. There's a lot of money going into that infrastructure. So, I hear a lot of, well, that's the way it's always been done, and I think that just that automation and elimination of manual tasks will be the first phase of over the next 12 to 18 months. But I think from our point of view, we're just going to continue to innovate with our customers, and basically any new solution must enhance safety, network performance, and operational continuity, because in rail, failure is not an option.
100%. Amazing discussion, Scott. Great insights. I wholeheartedly thank you for coming on this board and sharing your thoughts with us.
No, thank you very much. It's been a great afternoon.
I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story, or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry, contact me on railwaytransportationsystems@gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. Stay safe and take care of yourself.